Chapter 3. Jobs that are good for you. The new tech industry is populated by young, immoral hustlers, the kind of young guys who watched The Social Network and its depiction of Mark Zuckerberg as a lying, thieving, backstabbing prick, and left the theater wanting to be just like that guy. Dan Lyons, Disrupted, My Misadventure in the Startup Bubble. You tend to be gamblers and are attracted to companies that are in on the action. The faster pace the better, with high risk and higher profit. You operate best in jobs with little regimented structure or enforced routine. There's no better place than a shop run on barely contained chaos for you to show off your preternatural ability to remain calm and confident. Your slow, even pulse in the face of general panic will make you look like a hero, while the disorganization all around will enable you to maneuver, exploit loopholes, and avoid getting trapped or exposed. When in doubt, keep moving. Partially for this reason, you like cities. They are easy to hide in. Cities are also exciting and fun for you. Bob Hare said, psychopaths tend to gravitate toward the bright lights. You'll find lots of them in New York and London and Los Angeles. So pack your bags and get out of the boonies for starters. As psychologist Paul Babiak writes, when dramatic organizational change is added to the normal levels of job insecurity, personality clashes, and political battling, the resulting chaotic milieu provides both the necessary stimulation and sufficient cover for psychopathic behavior. Rapid business growth, increased downsizing, frequent reorganizations, mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures have inadvertently increased the number of attractive employment opportunities for you. Startups, mergers, and firms touting a creative approach to management are good places to start. Others might call this type of organization shambolic, chaotic, disorganized, or confused. But you'll settle in just fine. Look for loosely defined jobs with potential for advancement and variety. It helps to choose something you are also naturally good at, because while competence alone is completely overrated when climbing the ladder is concerned, it is a decent way to avoid scrutiny. Everything will be easier for you if you are actually somewhat good at what you do.
Tech startups are obviously the unicorn in the room. With rapidly changing technology affecting every aspect of modern life, investors still crazy to find the next Facebook will throw money at a company named after an animal which doesn't exist. A unicorn company is defined as a private startup thought to be worth at least $1 billion. Importantly, this valuation is based on revenue levels, not the actual profits and losses of the company, which are legally kept private until the IPO is announced and the papers are filed. It's only then that the investors can see what kind of animal comes out of the egg. This is heaven for you. Except, you won't be alone. Much of the valley is playing by your rules. Reporter Dan Lyons, who did Hard Time there, describes the new business model like this. Grow fast, lose money, go public. It's a simple racket. Venture capitalists pump millions of dollars into a company. The company spends some of that money coding up a minimum viable product, or MVP, and then pumps enormous sums into acquiring customers. The losses pile up, but the revenue number rises. There's also a sense among startups that it's okay for them to break the rules because they're underdogs competing against huge opponents. They're David, firing his slingshot at Goliath. Another argument is that the big guys break just as many rules as the little guys. Everybody cheats, and only suckers drive inside the lines. The whole thing is based on companies trying to achieve escape velocity before they blow themselves up. These are all plans and rationalizations that suit you very well. Your ability to talk a big game will be an asset, the frenetic pace is stimulating, it should all be great good fun, and you could make a killing if the company goes public and doesn't implode.
Almost a Cinderella story. Seattle protesters called Uber founder Travis Kalanick a sociopath, attempting, apparently, to insult him. He probably said no shit under his breath and laughed all the way to the bank. His methods are hardly new and not even close to being the most savage. These soft-headed protesters should check their rage at the door and take a history class if they want to understand what a real corporate shitshow is all about. Look at Travis's famous predecessor, steel titan Andrew Carnegie, whose incredibly profitable mills in Pittsburgh were so dangerously run that workers suffering accidental death there accounted, at one point, for 20% of all deaths of men in the city. All Uber does is routinely and aggressively sidestep the law and regulation, violate industry norms, ignore ethical boundaries, and trample on competitive relationships. This is the perfect kind of place for you. Now some may say it all caught up with Travis, turning his Uber into a pumpkin at midnight when he was forced to step down as chief executive. And sure, there is a certain dashing crash and burn quality to it. Uber's workplace culture has been exposed as condoning sexual harassment and discrimination, and the company is under federal investigation for grayballing, or using a fake version of its app to evade law enforcement agencies. Or you can think about it this way. Federal inquiries often don't lead to criminal charges, and grayballing helped Uber, now valued at $70 billion, break into markets in 70 countries. Travis is still worth about $7.1 billion. He permanently disrupted the entire for-hire transportation business, and now he doesn't even have to go to work. The downside of some tech startups is all the togetherness and groupthink and brainstorming shit that goes down. You're not big into sharing. Also, everyone's so outrageously optimistic, firing off sanctimonious exhortations about changing the world with an app and posting vacuous shit like live your truth on the kitchen fridge. Easier said than done when you're supposed to clock in at least 80 hours a week and aren't considered true blue unless you sleep on a beanbag in a Silicon Valley romper room at least once a week. I mean, law firms require these kinds of hours from their new recruits too, but at least they let them go home and give them a driver. Plus, there are a few girls at a law firm. But all in all, if you can surf the chaos and stay away from the meetings, the tech startup is a fantastic place for you. Verdict: tech startup, yes. Obviously, you know to avoid the few giant bureaucratic dinosaurs still around, filled with procedures, protocols, systems, and managers who will cramp your style and bore you to tears. But there's another kind of new company you should be equally wary of. Fans call them lifestyle companies. Those who find them creepy call them nanny companies, or worse. They are often associated with maturing tech and have campuses instead of office buildings. Free lunch. Bring your kids to work day on Friday. Movie nights. Gardens and fountains. Loyalty perks like branded swag and passes to Disneyland. Velvety voiced AI bots to help you when the network gets all fucked up. They want you to belong and to agree with them. Do it their way in a soporific daze stupefied by free lattes. Lots of people find this soothing and comfortable, but it will drive you up the wall. It's really just a new form of control, run by a benevolent megalomaniac. They want to make you belong completely to them, without conflict. Compliant. This will not do. You want what you want, not what they want. You don't give a shit about belonging, and constant compliance is going to be exhausting. This place is far too cult-like for you. You'd rather start a dumpster fire. Verdict: Nanny Corp, no.
Write a self-help book. If you write a book that promises to help people get what they want because they want it, you could make a mint. Don't be shy, you don't have to be a great writer, you can always get a ghostwriter, you just need a good con. In fact, a large majority of self-help books today simply regurgitate a few essential pioneers with some sort of personal expertise angle. I'm a diplomat, or a soldier, or a spy, and here's my take on how to get what you want based on what these other guys said. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill was an early seminal work. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is the gold standard. Influence, The Power of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini was big for a while, and of course there is The Secret, an incredibly degraded yet popular, latter-day version of the same crap whose vacuity was publicly supported by Oprah. Simple synopsis: focus your mind on what you want and by the law of attraction, you will get it. You and I know there is no such law and that the universe doesn't care about us. Doesn't care at all. But people love this kind of pap. Verdict:
Write a catchy book that promises people they can get what they want because they want it, yes.
Keep an open mind. Don't be railroaded by the general population's perception that sociopaths are all either criminals, CEOs, or Wall Street stock traders. Don't get me wrong. These are excellent jobs for you if they fit with your natural talents, but stay open to other ideas. If you're more interested in controlling others than controlling money, consider becoming a preacher or starting a religion. If you are most interested in violence with impunity, look into police work, the Secret Service, or becoming a spy. According to Kevin Dutton's The Wisdom of Psychopaths, it's a little-known fact that sociopaths are overrepresented in many positions considered pro-social or helping positions like the ministry and civil service. Because Dutton's test had to rely on volunteers, notably absent are famous people like politicians and entertainers. It's an imperfect list, but a promising start. Here is his list of the UK's most psychopathic professions.
1. Spy.
2. Lawyer. 3. Media TV/radio personality. 4. Salesperson. 5. Surgeon. 6. Journalist. 7. Police officer. 8. Clergy person.
9. Chef.
10. Civil servant. Here are some possible reasons why these professions are included.
Surgeon, chef. If you are nimble, coordinated, and spatially aware, maybe slicing onions or eyeballs is just the ticket for you. Your cognitive strength is dorsal system mental processing. The dorsal system is the part of your brain concerned with where things are around you, not who they are or whether or not they're your friend. It guides your movements through space and uses logic and critical analysis, cold cognition, not emotion, hot cognition, to make decisions. It helps you stalk and track movement, and it works fast. Fallon describes your potential strength like this: a psychopath has a poorly functioning ventral system, usually used for hot cognition, but can have a normal or even supernormal dorsal system, so that without the bother of conscience and empathy, the cold planning and execution of predatory behaviors becomes finely tuned, convincing, highly manipulative, and formidable. That, plus a razor focus which makes you very good at giving undivided attention to things that interest most and at ignoring other things, could indeed make you well suited for the operating room or a high-end kitchen. These strengths suggest you might also be a good hunter or ball player. Or that you also have OCD. But do note, if you do not have a hyper-functioning dorsal system, your competing impulsiveness will wreak havoc on these kinds of jobs. Psychologist David Cox found that soldiers who performed the exacting and dangerous task of defusing or dismantling IRA bombs referred to psychopaths as cowboys, unreliable and impulsive individuals who lacked the perfectionism and attention to detail needed to stay alive on the job. So check your head before you sign up. Or stick with less lethal handiwork like a mechanic. If you know how to fix things, you will be respected and left alone. Verdict: surgeon or chef, yes. Bomb squad, maybe.
Media production. No one is likely to play an important part in the production of a feature film who is completely lacking in triadic skills. Oliver James, Office Politics. The benefits of the entertainment industry for you are numerous. First, the arrangement is inherently chaotic and you will find it exciting. Every few months, a new coalition arises to facilitate a new project backed by a huge amount of money, involving volatile personalities, hundreds of moving parts, and no exact blueprint on how to proceed. Second, it runs on charm and personal magnetism, or star power. Third, project-based work with a defined endpoint can help those of you who lose focus and self-control after a while. You will have to deal with more sociopaths than in the average workplace, but blessed with a hard end date and the inevitable personnel shuffle, you should be able to move fast enough to stay ahead of trouble. The downside of project-based operations is you have to keep finding new work all the time. The key to this is keeping your act together until the very end. Word travels, and these businesses are smaller and more interconnected than you'd think. Other production-based jobs provide the similar benefit of a good paycheck, a hard end date, and revolving personnel, like working a shift on an oil rig. But these jobs are more difficult and dangerous. Verdict: media production, yes.
Clergy. Wait, Did somebody just say Jim Jones? While many see the ministry as a good, selfless, and helpful profession, it also provides three things that are extremely attractive to you: cover, influence, and an attentive crowd whose minds are dominated by belief rather than critical thinking. Religious greats. If you want to extend your reach as a religious visionary, warning, this can get you killed. You must think big. The more spectacular and outlandish the claim, the better the results will be. Jesus convinced people he was the Son of God. He was so good at it that this belief has persisted for thousands of years, convincing hundreds of millions of people and causing countless wars. The downside: Jesus was crucified. Joseph Smith, the father of the Mormon religion, claimed to have dug up some holy gold tablets that were conveniently located on his farm. He lost these priceless artifacts but recreated what they said by staring into a hat. Along with pronouncements by an angel named Moroni and a decree that you shouldn't drink coffee, Smith preached that Jesus came to America and hung out with the American Indians. Mormonism has spanned the globe and in the 1980s and 1990s was the fastest growing religion on planet Earth. Downside: Smith was lynched. L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, spent a great deal of time and effort to get his teachings classified as a religion rather than a form of quack self-help psychology. He hated psychologists because, as a religion, you get tax-exempt status. Another plus in the religion business. Hubbard convinced millions that a foreign race of aliens called Thetans were dumped into prehistoric volcanoes, and their spirits now inhabit us, creating negative energy you can only get rid of by paying the church outrageous sums of money. If this sounds batshit crazy, it's because it is. But it sure makes a lot of money. Downside: Hubbard spent the latter part of his life in hiding from the IRS and died under mysterious circumstances. I recently received a Dianetics questionnaire in the mail, which is brilliantly constructed so that no matter how you answer, your score indicates that you are in dire need of Scientology. It's a closed loop. No matter what you answer, you need Scientology. If you can trap people like this, you are one step ahead. Successful cults are really good not only at offering a secret promise: if you come inside, we will tell you the thing you desperately want to know, the thing which will rid you of the pain of being a human being, but are also great at getting you to invest yourself and increasingly believe you need to follow them so that by the time the secret is revealed to you as it must be, an empty box, you are already brainwashed. Ex-Scientology member Jason Begg describes the church's methods excellently. If I'm trying to enslave somebody, the best trap is you get a guy to just keep himself in jail. And that's what Scientology does. You just keep yourself in jail. You believe it and you're investing your time and your money, and so, you can't be a fool. That's too much to confront. 16 Scientology also employs an effective defense maneuver you should try when under pressure. They call it fair game, which is shorthand for never defend, always attack. It has worked well for them. Use it. Another influential 1950s religious player, sometimes known as God's salesman, was Pastor Norman Vincent Peale. He straddled the religion/self-help line with his book The Power of Positive Thinking, where he promoted unmitigated self-confidence, saying formulate and staple indelibly on your mind a mental picture of yourself as succeeding. Hold this picture tenaciously. Never permit it to fade. He also promoted the idea that somehow belief in the gospel can be used to unleash material success. By the way, this dude was Donald Trump's pastor as a child. From this seed, the whole aspirational religious movement known as prosperity gospel has sprouted televangelists and megachurches all over the country, funded by the idea that God will give you money and health if you prove you are a good follower by giving lots of money to your church. If you can convince people of this, you could well have your own gilded megachurch in a strip mall one day. Verdict: clergy, yes. But you might get killed. We could go on like this for days, but you get the idea. Identify your best sociopathic traits, steer toward them and away from your least controllable urges. Impulsive? Predator? Disagreeable? Go through the different sociopathic professions discussed and play to your strengths. Hone in on a field of expertise where you'll be best suited to crush and win while at the same time appearing confident, valuable, and promotable.
Employment tests. Between your resume and the interview seat lies some kind of gatekeeper whose main task is to assess whether or not you are technically qualified and whether or not your psychological temperament, look, and character are suitable for the job and the company culture. You may be tempted to brush these people off as petty and irrelevant, but do not underestimate them. One of their favorite tools is the personality test. While it's unlikely HR is going to give you the hair psychopathy test, their questions will echo certain concerns about what is surely lurking inside you. In 2013, 57% of large U.S. employers used pre-hire assessments to screen applicants before the interview phase. These can be hacked. They can be beaten. But not in exactly the way you might think. Before you take any test, you should familiarize yourself with the way they work. First, know that when they tell you there are no right or wrong answers, they are lying. Of course there are. In 1956, William White published a book called The Organization Man, which looked into the rise of the Human Relations Department and their unbridled enthusiasm for scientism. The idea being that a person's mind, self, what have you, could one day be profiled and described with scientific exactitude. You would become a psychological certainty as identifiable as a cancer cell or a string of genes. When the research was finally completed, who you are would have an answer. An answer that would provide an accurate and proven prognosticator of a valuable and successful employee. HR, here's Bill, he's a 46. Manager, great, set him up in the hive. All 46s thrive on big data. Put him by the window. HR, what else do you need? Manager, I've got some real dog shit to clean up. I need a 41, a 996, and a blue ox.
The scientism folks wanted to eliminate conflict, promote worker peace and stability, and get everyone to buy a Weber grill and move to the suburbs. Obviously that never happened. 70 years later, personality tests have been refined, but are fundamentally the same. Many companies judge you based on how similar your test results are to those of their current employees. We use our existing employees that we know are really good at the job and then try to find people who just like them, said John Marek, co-founder of Consumer Cellular, a cell phone service company. This means they compare your results against those of people who already work there. If you match, you get the job. If not, adios. Well, that's a trying little closed loop. If a person can't get into the company in the first place because he doesn't match the type of people who already work there, he can't very well serve as a successful model for new prospects. Deal with it, that's the way it works. They don't want to know how great or brilliant or unique you are, just how close you come to being like their existing successful employees. Taking a moment to read up on the company mission statements and press releases can help you get into the mindset of what their ideal employee might be like. Craft your answers accordingly. Much of White's advice on how to cheat on personality tests still works. Because, as a sociopath, you tend to really emphasize how great you are. Pay attention to this piece of White's advice. You don't win a good score, you avoid a bad one. Your safety lies in getting a score somewhere between the 40th and 60th percentiles, which is to say, you should try to answer as if you were like everybody else is supposed to be. When asked for word associations or comments about the world, give the most conventional, run-of-the-mill, pedestrian answer possible. And as far as eliminating any bad characteristics, don't overdo it. White continues, these tests almost always have lie scores built into them. This means a too perfect score will indicate you are lying. A few mild neuroses conceded here and there won't give you too bad a score. And in conceding neuroses you should know that more often than not you have the best margin for error if you err on the side of being hypermanic, that is, too energetic and active. Don't be too dominant. Remember, these tests are all about psychological profiling and often contain nothing related to the specific tasks the job requires. Your core personality is being probed and you have a secret to keep. Some other pieces of advice. Be psychologically consistent with your answers. Don't say you're super imaginative and also super conscientious because they both seemed like the right answer at the time. Actually, don't say you're super anything. When in doubt, always say you like people. Avoid condescending statements. Don't overthink the answers. If you get too clever or cute, you will come off as being duplicitous. Many online tests even have a timer recording how long you take to answer each question. A slow response time gives the impression you are overthinking, aka trying to figure out what they want to hear, aka lying. This can negatively affect your score. Don't get paranoid. Remember, the HR people are not there to out you as a sociopath. They are not the police. They just want to know if you are a fit. If anything, their radar is more targeted toward keeping out a loud misfit than a Ted Bundy from their exclusive and wonderful office culture. Remember, they once had to take this test and were deemed A-OK, and they feel proud of this. Stay relaxed and moderate. Many tests are based on the Big Five personality traits, known by the cute anagram OCEAN. These 5 overarching personality traits are perceived to define a person's broad characteristics and, by extension, job suitability. You want to rate highish on the positive traits and lowish on the negative. Positive traits: openness, imaginative, expansive, interested in new things. Conscientiousness, reliable, organized, thorough. Extroversion, energetic, assertive. Agreeableness, cooperative, friendly, compassionate. Negative trait: neuroticism, emotionally unstable, negative emotions.
Low agreeableness is the most important red flag for a sociopath like you to avoid triggering. On personality tests, you tend to score significantly lower than average on agreeability ratings. According to psychologist Dan P. McAdams, people low in agreeableness are described as callous, rude, arrogant, and lacking in empathy, are typically viewed as untrustworthy. People want you to behave and have for decades. Here's a sample principle from General Electric's Effective Presentation course from 1956. Never say anything controversial. This course also claimed, you can always get anybody to do what you wish. A sentiment we wholeheartedly agree with. This advice to act inoffensively will help you on these tests, but it's also a good idea in general. Act agreeable as often as possible. This does not mean be spineless, weak, or ready to capitulate. It doesn't mean be a timid pushover in pleated chinos. It just means don't bite someone's fucking head off for not setting up the cloud password on your keychain. Go about your business and do what you need to do. Just keep the unnecessary caustic remarks or bitchiness to a minimum. It will take a little work on your part to get a good score on conscientiousness, as you'll have to cover up for the fact that you naturally possess exactly none. But don't overdo it. This is all about getting past HR and getting a job you are going to have to deal with possibly for years, so don't lie about everything. Just the disagreeableness thing. Oh, and careful with the neurotic thing. McAdams continues, higher scores on neuroticism are always bad, having proved to be a risk factor for unhappiness, dysfunctional relationships, and mental health problems. If you want to practice and analyze your scores, take an OCEAN test online. One place you can do it is at https://ocean.cambridgeanalytica.org to see how you score. Yes, these kind of sites are likely analyzing and selling your data. Idea number 1. Before you take the test for the job you really want, try taking a few practice tests by applying for jobs you have no interest in, but have online questionnaires. Pick 5 at random. Answer the first questionnaire truthfully. Your lack of interest will help prevent you from protecting yourself. For the others, read up on the job, the company creed, and any company newsletters or employee bios you can find to get a flavor for who they consider themselves to be. Take the other tests, combining the above-mentioned tips with the company's advertised values, and try to play an ideal employee. See which interviews you get. Study your performance. Tell them you already have a job, but thanks for the offer. When your test-to-callback ratio improves, you are ready to move on to the real company you are interested in. Note that the first company is not calling you back. Keep in mind, the questions and answers will not remain static. You are engaged in a game of psychic cat and mouse. Know that as you hack the tests, the test designers are also learning how to hide the correct response from you. Idea number 2. If you are actually skilled at what you do, try to find companies that are testing for aptitude rather than personality. Aptitude tests are less psychologically tricky, tend to be more factually accurate, and can show off your skills without exposing your dark side. Many companies also employ criminal record and credit checks, which are cheaper and easier to run online than ever before. Not having an arrest record is obviously preferred. But if you do have one, it's worth paying a lawyer to get convictions reduced from felonies to misdemeanors when allowable by law, which is more often than you'd think. And make sure any arrests that didn't result in a conviction are properly expunged. Otherwise, they're probably still lurking in your digital skeleton closet. If you do get confronted with your arrest record by some nosy prying gatekeeper, act embarrassed, but then gently remind her that the FBI currently has 77.7 million people on file for arrest, which is almost 1 in 3 of all adults in the USA. Tell her you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the cops told you the breathalyzer was faulty, but they needed to meet their quota. If that doesn't work, try telling a joke or changing the subject.